I've been hearing a lot of people giving the advice that AI really is going to change things, but it is not ready for prime time yet. And I don't blame them for thinking that way because there are larger forces at work than whatever yours or my opinion might be. There was a LinkedIn post by somebody from Andreessen Horowitz, the venture fund that's funding this whole AI movement, basically explaining why that is. So I'm going to read that to you, and then we're going to hit on some of the things that Kyle said last week and a couple other things that's been said on the podcast that are really going to contextualize why that is for property managers. I'm excited for you to listen to this one. Enjoy. Welcome to the Property Management Frame Breakers podcast. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez, and I am here to introduce you to the folks in the property management space that have broken the frame of what you may believe was possible. This podcast is presented by Vendoroo. It is your all-in-one AI solution for resolving your maintenance needs. Let's go. Do you often feel like AI in property management has felt like mostly hype and not a lot of help? Well, property management is not alone in this. There's this recent LinkedIn post from a guy from Andreessen Horowitz, one of the big venture funds that, Silicon Valley backs all this AI stuff, that put into words what I think a lot of us are feeling. And I want to share it with you because I think it's the best breakdown I've seen of why AI feels meh, and people believe that it might be just like not ready for prime time yet, and more importantly, what we're missing because of it. So here is what Seema Amble writes from Andreessen Horowitz. We get asked a lot, if AI is so obvious, why don't incumbent vertical SaaS companies build AI agents? The go-to move for incumbents? Still slap on a chatbot and on top of existing data. They're shipping safe, incremental features, chatbots, benchmarks, descriptions, while startups can go after full workflow automation. Think about it. Your entire business is built around guiding humans through workflows. Why would you launch an AI agent that does the work for them? He's talking about these SaaS companies. They don't lack data or customers, but AI threatens their core products. Second problem, org structure. At many incumbents, AI is still a feature team. A few PMs, project managers, and engineers working in a corner trying to ship a chatbot like Edition with the core product marching on. Many of these companies have taken months to assemble these teams. No mandate, no power, no chance to rethink the product end to end. Even when they do try to swing bigger, incumbents hit execution and delivery walls. Voice agents need ultra-low latency, clean integrations, and service layers. These companies weren't built for that. So what are they shipping? Here's a few flavors. Shopify is shipping AI-generated product descriptions. Toast is shipping price benchmarking. Square is shipping chatbot for spend insights. In beta launches next July. MindBody, 24/7 AI receptionist, and Service Titan, job value predictor. None of these features really move the needle. They don't automate end-to-end jobs. They don't collapse workflows. They're mostly about surfacing data, not taking action. While incumbents are flexing their power, the field is open for AI native entrants to take hard bets incumbents won't, i.e. voice, workflow automation. But that means that often happens in pieces. End-to-end automation doesn't happen overnight, and they need a plan for API access and data dependency. So he's advising them not to be afraid to bundle in services if that's what it takes. So that's the text, right? This idea is something that we've talked about some on this podcast. I think there is some real insight from recent conversations we've had with Kyle, a past conversation with Reza. But for me, I see the analogy of what they're talking about is, first of all, in property management, this feels like these like smart features that incumbents ship, or these like acquisitions that somebody gets and they promise that now it's going to go into the thing, but it never actually integrates and it's kind of gone by the wayside. It was never that good, right? There's just very few of these like native startup AI first companies like Vendoroo. And I think that is, part of a bigger issue. But the overall analogy is this. I call it the wrong ship problem. Imagine you built a ship to cruise through tropical waters to a warm island somewhere, right? Destination, then all of a sudden, the destination changes. The ship might be made to survive storms. It might be made to brave the heat. It might be made to like combat mosquitoes, but it's not equipped for the cold. And the crew, might be made to like handle all those things, but maybe they were gonna arrive there and they were gonna farm, and all of a sudden they're going to the Arctic, and now they gotta like ice fish, right? Completely different skill sets, completely different tooling for a different destination. SaaS was a different destination than AI. So, I feel it in multiple ways, right? From like the tooling issue, from the culture issue, and then that leads to a bigger issue of kind of like what the popular opinion is. From the tooling standpoint, I think Kyle Erb's podcast from Wednesday, I think illustrates it perfectly, right? He's tested every major tool in the space, and he explains it as most of these SaaS platforms, they're made for templated forms, right? Templated forms were perfect for a certain level of automation, but those automations were only outbound through these templates. The moment that it went inbound, it would break, right? Like it can only stay within a certain frame. So when they stick AI agents and then try to, works outbound, right? I can go communicate, take all this data and put it into something. But when it tries to re-communicate, keeping unstructured communications like you would have with a resident or with an owner or with a vendor into the field of forms, it's just not going to work. So he says in it, this idea that like when you put an agent into a form-based, it actually works worse than just form-based, right? You end up going just back to manual. So he's saying like it's got to be either agent, AI first, or just stick with the form thing and do the human thing without AI. That is the reason why a lot of these features, a lot of these acquisitions are not fitting in. They're trying to instill them into this form-based architecture that is not AI first. The other piece is the crew though, right? Like this idea of like you're ready to go combat mosquitoes and fish for marlin, and now you got to go ice fish and be wary of polar bears and the cold. Reza talks about this, and I think is podcast number 1, this idea that SaaS forever has been running away from outcomes. They're built to scale. They're built to like not own everything, just own the piece that can really be duplicated and scale and not necessarily be accountable for an outcome. That is a cultural thing. When you've been building that forever, and man, I used to have, this is a personal story, right? But I once had a business partner. My old business was insanely personal, right? It was a boutique agency doing my own idea of how you do business development that has since been proven and whatever. But I early on brought on a partner, right? That I ended up calling my co-founder. And he came from one of these like big technology companies. I was like, man, this guy's going to help me scale. And he kept trying to like automate as much as possible, scale as much as possible, right? Like remove ourselves from the actual like thing that was driving value, which was this like unique human insight thing and relationships that I built everything around. It just didn't work. It didn't go together. It was like trying to put an agent into a form, right? Like I'm the agent, I can't be in a form. This process couldn't have been in a form, right? And for me, I had to rethink my whole business model because I couldn't do it that way. I had to basically just go really, really boutique. So that being said, just think about somebody that's been in a SaaS company that's been thinking this way. How do we scale this thing? How do we like blitz, do blah, this and that? Like how do we not own that outcome, but just kind of like remove this little piece, as opposed to people that are in a company that's built on an outcome-based solution that has been ingrained in them, that you can't quit until you figure this thing out, that you continue to get closer to the problem, not like continue to build for as many people as possible, but build for every single scenario, right? It's a cultural shift. So you almost have to start over, right? Like from an infrastructure standpoint, from a team standpoint. And then here's the less obvious thing that I don't think we've addressed anywhere that finally hit me. If you're a property manager, chances are you've been listening to smart voices in the space, right? You're not the tech expert. You're listening to consultants, peers, vendors. Those voices have been on this ship, on the tropical sea ship, right? On the form-based ship, on the SaaS-based ship for very long. And they give an inordinate amount of advice to people that believe it. So when they go in there and they're like, man, we're trying to figure out AI, we're trying to do it. I promise you we're doing our best and we got the best people, and it doesn't work for them, and they're still coming from this form-based thing. And then the influencers in the space that have used them and have had really deep relationships for a really, really long time see it and see that it doesn't work. Of course, they're going to trust their friends. Their friends are not giving them advice based on any kind of malice. They're giving them advice based on momentum, right? So then that permeates into the industry, this idea of agentic AI not ready for prime time, right? So that's why, to me, this conversation with Kyle Erb was so valuable on Wednesday. If you haven't listened to it, I suggest you go listen to it, because he knows enough about property management and about technology to know what is actually possible, and he's really keying in on it, and he really explains it in a really, really good way, right? So if like AI feels more like meh-I, right? It's not AI that's the problem, right? Maybe you just haven't been shown the right AI under, not just the right AI, but the right AI under the right conditions. So that to me is the big differentiator here. That is why I think when I came into this space and a lot of people giving me advice, like, somebody's just why isn't AppFolio going to figure this thing out, right? Like somebody with better distribution, like Vendoroo doesn't have a moat. What I see is a company that was built AI first, that has, really taken the time to continue to build it this way at significant cost to us, right? This is the harder route, right? Like sailing to the Caribbean is harder than sailing to the Arctic when you are from the South, right? So just something to think about. Think about this idea of how these things are influenced when people talk about AI first versus, AI injected into previous solutions. This is what to look for. Are you injecting an agent into a form? And is that ever going to work? Nah, dog, right? Or are you building AI first native infrastructure that functions it from the ground up? And then who's the team that's built this? Is the culture of the company decided to move away from, this attachment to the past, right? This attachment to forms, this attachment to scale and not outcomes? Or is it reverse engineering the future? Is it building AI first? Is it thinking outcomes first? Is it not thinking scale? Is thinking mass customization? And then last but not least, just check the opinions that you're listening to, right? Like I would venture to say that there's probably 6 to 10 people that have long, deep relationships that have been providing tons of value to the property management industry for a long time. And those opinions play the telephone game all the way back to you, whether you know them or not. But then there's like a small minority that really understands it from the ground up, AI first. Kyle is honestly the first guy that I truly meet that in an unbiased way, I feel truly gets it and has the authority to feel this way and has the authority to really question all these different things. But I'm sure there's a bunch more out there. If that's you or you know someone like that, I would love to meet them, because we are building the AI first ship. Welcome aboard.